Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semuanya. Perkenalkan, saya Dede Puji Setiono, dosen dari Departemen Manajemen dan Kebijakan Publik, Fakultas Ilmu Sosial dan Ilmu Politik, Universitas Gadjah Mada. Hari ini saya akan memaparkan rencana pembelajaran untuk kelas pengantar kebijakan publik. Karena kelas yang saya ajar adalah kelas International Undergraduate Program dengan bahasa pengantar adalah bahasa Inggris, maka saya akan memperkenalkan semua komponen pembelajaran termasuk learning outcome dalam bahasa Inggris. So, the Introductions to Public Policy class is aimed for introducing the basic public policy concept and also introduce the elements in public policy, what defines public policy, what actors behind a policy, and what dynamics is usually happening in a public policy. So for our course learning outcomes, we have 3 learning outcomes that we highlight. The first one is we want to make sure that after taking the course, students are able to evaluate and compare existing public policies and management dynamics. The second is able to demonstrate systematic thinking to formulate public policies. And the third one is able to articulate values of public interest. We have 6 learning outcomes derived from the initial learning outcomes, including to explain the concept of public policy, to compare different types of public policy, to explain public policy cycles, to identify and analyze public policy environments, to identify and analyze actors, and lastly, to capture and criticize values of public policy interest. To see what the class looks like, let's see the following video. Okay, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How are you? Good. You had your breakfast already? You see the music is around there? Do you see what happens around there? What they are doing right now? Sunset Fair. What is in the fair? Are they selling something or? Oh, introducing the students club. Are you interested to join in any clubs already? Maybe? Okay, that's good one because I believe the university life should not stuck with only learning. You need to expand your social networking, and the students club is one of the best way for you to connect and network. By the way, welcome to the Introductions to Public Policy class. This is a mandatory/required class for you who came from the Public Policy Management. I know this is your first semester and this is the course that you need to take before you proceed to the more advanced classes. This will provide you with the basic information and knowledge necessary for you to take the other courses. Let me introduce myself. My name is Dede Setiono. I will be co-teaching this class with Dr. Amber Widaningrum. Probably some of you have met her, and I think she came to our introductory session, so you probably have known her by the sessions. And I will be taking the first week to the midterm session, so the first 8 sessions will be with me, and then the rest of the sessions will be with Ibu Amber Wida. So this class is 4 credit courses, and it's mandatory as I mentioned before. Now, this is our learning objective. So, having these courses, and by the end of the courses, I would expect you to be able to achieve this learning objective. One of them is to be able to evaluate and compare existing policies, meaning that you get the understanding of what policies actually means, how it works, what the mechanisms it works, particularly in Indonesian context, and compare the policies, and you can assess the policies to your own judgment based on the literature and the scholarly works. The next learning outcomes that I would expect for you to have is, by the end of the course, you are able to demonstrate what we call a systemic thinking, especially in order to formulate public policy. So later we will learn the cycles of public policy, and one of the important terms in that particular cycle is how policy formulations looks like, and I will expect you to have that ability by the end of the course. And the last one is be articulate in expressing what actually the values usually contain within a policy. So I will expect you to understand not only the framework of the policy, but the values within the policy itself. Okay, so let's proceed with week 1 materials. This week, I will introduce the fundamental concept of public policy, and we would like to explore together with you what public policy actually is and why it matters in our day-to-day life. With this being said, we have several learning objectives. First is that you need to understand the concept of public policy, and then you will be able to explain the importance and urgency of the public policy itself, and then you are able to identify the key elements that constitute public policy. And lastly, I'm expecting you to be able to recognize what public policy is in addressing societal changes. So, before proceeding further, because you are in the major or study program of public policy and management, I would like to ask you, without reading the prompt here, without reading the slides, to your own word, what is public policy? What defines public policy? Any volunteer? Okay.
Allow me to answer. Public policy is a type of legislation that is designed to impact the government, economically, and society in different ways. It affects the decisions made by governments, corporations, and educational facilities that may affect the lives of millions. Thank you.
Okay, so it's made by the government or other entities. It affects so many aspects of our life, economically, socially, and it affects millions of people. Thank you for that definitions. Any other want to share their opinion?
Allow me to answer with the different words. Public policy is what government choose to do or not in order to solve especially public problems. And it's different with politics, which is struggle for power, and the administration, it's how policies are carried out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for distinguishing between policy and politics. As you mentioned, politics might rely more on the struggling part for the power, but public policy especially, is dealing with something else. Public policy, as you mentioned, is famously defined by Thomas Dye. He is one of the experts in public policy, used by so many other scholars, the definitions referred here. He mentions that policy is, in a simple term, whatever government chooses to do or not to do. To understand this, let me give you some example. So, in Yogyakarta, we have a huge problem of traffic, right? Because in Yogyakarta, we have about 72 universities, public and private. 72 universities, young men like you, men and women like you, 72 universities. Imagine the class started at 8 a.m. All those 72 universities coming together. We have limited space on the street, and they prefer to use motorcycle. When they all come together, the traffic happened, especially in Jalan Kaliurang. In the morning, this terrible traffic. You can stuck there for about 15 to 20 minutes. That's a problem, right? And if a policy is referring to that problem, according to Dye definitions, government can respond to make the issues to be something, choose to do something about the problem, or not to do it at all. Let's break it down. If the government chooses to address the traffic problem, for instance, by issuing some regulations, for instance, if you bring a car, you are not allowed to have 1 or 2 passengers. In the car, by the new regulations, we must implement a policy where one car must have at least 4 passengers. So it reduces the number of the car on the street. So that's the policy. The government chooses to do something by issuing a policy about the number of passengers in the car. That means government chooses to do something, right? That's one definition of public policy. Other definitions is the government might choose not to do anything about it. There is a traffic, yes, but if government issued a policy regarding that traffic, the consequences will be so consequential for them. For instance, if they limit the car passengers in on the street, they might be protested by the car industry. Why you make such ridiculous rules? Because of your rules, our sales of cars plummeting. Because now everybody just want to have one car with 4 passengers. Or other, probably, let's say, some sellers near the street, they usually try to offer their goods to the passengers on the car that is stuck on the traffic. If there is no traffic, they might protest the government. Hey, you take my source of income. There is no person to buy because there is no more traffic. So there's some consequences if government chooses to do something. That's why the government say that, okay, let the traffic happen. I will not choose to do anything. That's, according to Thomas Dye, is also a policy. The choice by the government to do or not to do something about the problem is defined as a public policy. You get the understanding? Okay.
I just want to ask, is this right? The definition of public policy is the government attempt or the people in charge to make its citizens happy. It doesn't end well.
Okay. That's very intriguing questions. Is the purpose of policy is to make citizens happy, prosperous, and living well, right? Anyone want to help to answer that question? Is that the purpose of public policy? Anyone want to help to answer that question?
For me, my opinion to answer your question is some policies before they made, there has a process like they have to identify the problem, and the problem is always dynamics, like it's always changed based on the society, and sometimes the policy were made just by temporary conditions. So I'm not actually agree to that. That you say just to make it happy, but at least the condition can be solved by the policy, and policy is always like if they had to be changed, they will change it like it's revision. Either they will revise it or change to another policy. That's it.
Okay. So, is the objective of public policy is to make people happy? The ideal situations, the very ideal world that we envision is, of course, yes. We want to make people happy with the policy. But the reality is always something else. The reality is always different. If you do something about policy, there will always be some side who support it because it aligns with their interests and needs, but other will firmly refuse that and become, quote unquote, the victims of the policies because their interests and needs are not addressed or their interests or needs are ignored. But of course, as we also learned, you cannot make everybody happy. It's quite impossible for a policy to satisfy everybody. That's why in public policy we have several paradigms in making decisions. There are several paradigms in making decisions in public policy. The first paradigm is what we learned and known as utilitarianism. This paradigm refers to the word utility, meaning that if we use this paradigm in making decisions about policy, we want the goods for the majority. The number of the goods is for the majority. Utilitarianism also equals to majority rules, meaning that whatever the government chooses to do should benefit the majority. Has this happened in Indonesia? Of course it has happened. The real and very simple example is what you can see in Java. In Java, because we have the majority here, more than 110 million people living in Java's island alone. Out of 278 million, 110 million plus people live in Java. The majority lives in Java. That's why most of the development happens in Java. Because the government want to satisfy the majority. Remember again, goods are for the majority. That's the simple definitions of utilitarianisms. So, if we use this particular paradigm in making decisions in public policy, we have some risk, right? The minority needs often ignored because our principle is the most number is for the majority, the most good is for the majority. And if you are aware and can catch the ideas enough, utilitarianism is what translates into democracy. That's where the ideas come from. Is the classic model called the heuristic stages of public policy. Heuristic stages. The heuristic stages of public policy say that policy is developed in a cycle where it starts with the agenda setting and end with the policy evaluations. So how we can make a policy is first by setting the agenda. The agenda here will relate to the problem. What problem should we discuss? There are so many problems around the world, right? Traffic problem, singleness problem, birth rate problem, so many problems. Poverty problem, wellness problem, mental health problem, so many problems. In agenda setting, what we do is we decide what problem should get our attention and what we need to do about that particular problem. We set the agenda. And then, after the agenda, we go to the policy formulations. Having this problem, this is how we formulate our policy. After formulating our policy, then we need to decide. Then the third stage is decisions making. After we have the formulations, this is how we decide. After half the decisions, we have the policy adoptions. Okay, we agree that these decisions will be used to address this problem, and let's implement the policy. And after the policy implementations, the last one is the policy evaluations. So that's the cycle stages of public policy. From agenda setting, policy formulations, decisions making, policy implementations, and policy evaluations. That's how we can observe the public policy in a cycle. Any questions about the cycle? We will discuss the cycle one by one starting next week. So we will learn about the agenda setting next week, and then policy formulations the upcoming week, and so on until the end. So don't worry if you have not understand all the cycles yet. So is there anything you want to say about what we have learned so far as the reflections of the materials? What you have learned from this first session so far about the public policy introductions? Maybe one or two to summarize or to synthesize what we have discussed so far. What have you learned so far about the class?
So I learned about the different types of public policy that we as Indonesians have implemented so far, and then as I've been in international fields, I can relate that to public policies that have been implemented in other countries and how I can implement that in Indonesia for the better, or for the better. I'm not going to say for worse.
Thank you, Omar. Any other person want to share their reflections?
Perhaps I could assist my colleagues to re-summarize what we have been learning today. So the first one, basically, we're introduced to what public policy is, and basically in the simplest terms possible. I would like to quote from Thomas Dye, 1994, that public policy is whatever government choose to do or not to do, for the better or for the worse. Also, we study about utilitarianism, which means the maximizing the best for the majority, and also deliberative democracy, where we are introduced that policies invented by this kind of democracy should be discussed deliberately with everyone impacted with the discussed policies based on my understanding. And also we are also introduced to the key elements of public policy, and also the importance of why we should study public policy, and also lastly the policy cycle or the heuristic stages. That's it.
Thank you so much. That's basically concludes our meeting too. That's what we have learned so far, and we will see you again next week at the same time. If you have no further questions, class is dismissed. Thank you.